Friends, faith is easy when things are going well. When things are not going well, faith doesn't much more seem to be able to do anything than get out of bed. So maybe a little more action, a little less talk. But there seems to be more talk about faith, more claiming of faith, more celebrating of faith, praising faith, and then so many people worry themselves sick about things that they cannot even control. Faith means that we are to act as though we had proof that something is true, even though we have no proof. I mean, we can't have proof and still call it faith. That's not faith. If some people are not worrying and fretting over things that are beyond their control, then they're trying to talk God into changing things, trying to manipulate God. Now, it may be through prayer, but still trying to manipulate God just the same. If they can't talk God into doing things, then they get a prayer chain going, a bunch of people praying. And if that doesn't get God moving, then let's add 6 or 8 more churches and their prayer chains and see if we can get them on the bandwagon and budge God into action. Well, friends, that's not faith. That is an attempt to control. That's an attempt to tell God what God's will should be. People want power in prayer. People want power with God. People want power to have God do what they want God to do. Power with God. That's a terminology I've heard a lot. It means that we have the ability, by power with God, to change God's direction, to change God's will. Oh, that's baloney. That's just simply control. I was pastor in it was the oldest town in East Tennessee at one time. And I was asked by a family to come and visit this lady in her home. Now her family was members. She didn't come to church much. By now she had some chronic illness that kind of kept her in bed. And I went to her bedside and we talked about what she was requesting prayer for. And she told of an instant that happened when she was just on life's deathbed. And she prayed, and others prayed, and the church prayer chain was started. And she didn't die. She recovered, at least to her former state of illness, but she recovered. And what she said to me kind of shocked me. She said, God did just what God was supposed to do. Now that's scary. I kind of wanted to step back and let the lightning hit over somewhere else. God did exactly what God was supposed to do. She had a kind of warped idea of what faith is, wouldn't you say? What prayer is about even. But in God's mercy, God wrapped His loving arms around her and pulled her to Himself in her time of transitioning from this life to the next. Just like God will all of us whenever we come to that point in life. Faith is not about talking God into doing something that God isn't already planned to do. That's not what faith is about. It's not about having power with God. Here's what faith is about. Patiently waiting on God, trusting in God's promises, leaning into His promises, trusting God to give us the strength to weather the storm and the peace in the midst of the storm. We can choose to live on the terrifying edge of a hurricane with its destructive winds and its floodwaters and its hail. Or we can choose to live in the eye of the storm. We can move into the eye of the storm. We can rest there. We can stay right there where there is nothing but perfect peace within us, though the hurricane is spinning around us. If we wait on God until the storm passes away, that is faith. That is acting on faith. That is trusting God through it all, not trying to change it all. Holding on to God's promises through all of it, all the way to the end. I was at a different church, and I was called to pray for a lady. She was the wife and mother of some of our church members. She wanted me to lay hands on her and pray for her healing. Well, I felt a little strange with that. It wasn't necessarily my way of praying, but I told her I was willing to pray for her. And her illness was a stubborn illness. It was not going to let go, and it did not let go. Not many people recovered from that. I don't know if anybody did. In talking with her, though, I asked her, I'm willing to pray for your healing. If God does not heal you, though, are you willing to accept God's answer? She looked at me with her faith set in stone, and she said, no, I'm not. Not. I was gobsmacked. Really? How shocking. Astounded that someone would so blatantly presume to be able to tell God exactly what to do. There's no faith involved in that. It was pure manipulation, pure control. Still, the same with that lady. When she moved from this world to the next, God embraced her with all of His love, and she entered into her perfect healing and her transition into the next life, into the eternal presence of God. A lot of times I think people think that their beliefs are the same as faith, but it's not so. Not so at all, not even close. We can believe in something but not have faith in it. It happens all the time. People just, I think, sometimes don't know the difference between beliefs and faith. Some people believe that we have an indelible appointed time to die, a death date set in stone by God. But when it comes time to die, people still want to live, and so they still pray to live, and they still get prayer chains going. They get the bandwagon moving, and that's still not faith, even though you're going against your faith, your beliefs. Belief and faith are not the same things at all. When something bad comes along, people sort of trust God, but no, not really. They have an ace in their pockets. They stick it away, and they hold it for a rainy day, and then when things are not going their way, they pull that ace out and place it on the table in front of God and say, I'm asking that you change all of this. Change your will, change your plans, make things come out the way I want them to come out. That's not faith. That's control. Where is faith when dying time comes? Was it ever there? Or did it disappear? So you see what I mean when I say faith and beliefs are not the same thing. Someone, according to their theology, may fully believe that they are going to go to heaven. Okay. When they die, okay. And that God is fully in control. All right. And it all is well. But they are terrified of dying. Where's the faith? Terrified of going to this blissful place that they have been preparing to go to. That's not what Jesus did when He died. When He moved from this world into the presence of the Father, what He did as He hung there on that painful cross was surrendered His spirit, His soul to God, into God's hands. He commended Himself. Belief is knowing that God is in control of everything. Yes, believe. And that everything will be fine because it is according to God's will. Yes. But faith is beyond that. Faith is trusting in God and experiencing God's peace as we wait upon God, even when it does not all go well. Some of my theologically conservative friends believe that everything happens for a reason. Then they change God's mind, try to change God's mind about it all by praying. Makes me dizzy to even think about it. That's not even congruent thinking. You can't have it both ways. You can't say God is in control, that God has God's will, and we want God to change. You can't do that. change the outcome. No. Or else you don't believe God is in control. One or the other, but you can't have it both ways. We simply cannot have it both ways. Also, at this point, we must ask ourselves, and it's fair to ask right now, what is the point of prayer? Is the point of prayer to ask God for stuff? Ask God to do your will? Is it to try and control God? Or is it to commune with God? Is it to sit in the presence of God and listen to God speak to us, to experience in the depth of our being the very presence of the Holy God? Is that the purpose of prayer, perhaps? We need to examine what exactly prayer is, and I guess we can do that in a separate talk. Let's do that. We're taught the Lord's Prayer. Does it say this? Lord, please suspend your will and do my will. Let my will be done. No, it doesn't say that. It says, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. The point of praying this prayer that we are taught to pray, this model prayer that we're to model all of our praying after, is not to try and change God's will, but it is to submit to God's will. Thy will be done on earth as in heaven. How come we cannot understand the very simplest part of this? Because our egos are so inflated. Our desire to control has taken charge of our lives. We are not acting in a faith manner, a Christian manner. We are acting out of ego, pure heathenism. If you can accept that. We're either going to humbly accept God's will or we're going to try and change God's will. That's our two choices. We're not going to be able to change God's will anyway. Now, I know that some of you will say, well, we prayed for so-and-so and they were healed. Absolutely wonderful. Give God thanks for that. And give God thanks for the nurses that attended that person and the doctors that treated that person. Or if it's a miraculous healing, give God thanks for that miraculous healing. Amen. But don't say God did just as God was supposed to do. Don't say that. Don't say that our prayer chain made this happen. No, how egoistic is that? That's maniacal egoism. Because I guarantee you, your prayer chain did not make God change God's plans. I will guarantee you that some people will reject this because they desperately want to be able to have some control. And I'm just here to challenge that. Just think about it. Really. Give it some thought. I was drowning in the Pacific Ocean. I was a conservative Christian at the time, very conservative. My father was a fundamentalist Baptist preacher. That was my theology. I believed that prayer could change things. At the time, I was in the Navy, and I was swimming off of a no-swimming beach in Southern California, just north of Tijuana, called Imperial Beach. And it was posted, no swimming. And the reason it was posted, because there were so frequently, there were rip tides, rip currents. That day, the waves were magnificent. I mean, a good body surfing wave can be 5 foot. These were 7 and 8 foot waves. Great for body surfing. And the way that you do the body surfing is you swim underneath the wave. As it comes, you dive under it and go to the next and dive under it and to the next and dive under it until you get out to where the swell is. And then when you get to that point where the swell is, you turn around and you wait on it and you paddle and you catch the wave and you just ride it in with your body surf it on in. Well, this time, I tried to swim under the wave, and the wave, a rip current, had out of nowhere, it had appeared. And it picked me up, and it threw me down. It scraped me against the bottom of the ocean, the sand and the pieces of shell. And then it did it again, picked me up, threw me down, scraped me against the bottom, picked me up again and again. It was just churning me with the waves. Not letting me swim out, not letting me swim into shore. I was taking on water, I was throwing up water, I was choking. I was becoming delirious. I was choking to death. I was drowning. I knew that. I knew it. I knew that that was coming. I knew it beyond any shadow of doubt. Now, there was a lull between the waves, and sometimes there is a lull. There may be 6 waves, and then a lull, and then some more waves. It was in this volley of waves that I just told God I can't fight it anymore. I give myself to God. I surrendered myself into God's hands. And the very last thing I said was that, please take care of my wife and my little 2-year-old baby. And then, I don't know, then I was gone. I drowned, I guess. I knew it was over. Now, here's the good part of that. I was in perfect peace. I have never before nor since ever experienced such a perfect peace as I was in that ocean right then. And then I heard somebody yelling and screaming and cussing at me. And I didn't want to come out of that peace, but there he was in front of me. I came into focus. There was a life ring laying on top of the ocean, bobbing with the water. And he was screaming at me to put my arm in the life ring. And I can remember exactly my thought as I was coming to. Maybe one more time. I put my arm in the life ring, and a wave hit. Smacked me. He pulled us out. He had fins on, so he could swim pretty good, and pulled us out to the ocean, then back in, down the beach, and on an angle coming in. And then I lay on the beach, still coughing and choking, and now I wasn't panicked. I might have looked panicked when I was out there trying to survive with the waves churning me, but I wasn't afraid. Never had a moment of fear. The most perfect peace, no moment of fear. I don't know how much time had passed, but I was jarred back into reality, and it wasn't my choice. My point in all this is I didn't pray to live. That was my theology. I should have been praying to live. That's the way I believed and thought. Pray and ask God to change things. But I didn't. I just simply trusted in God. I don't know why I didn't pray that. I just simply trusted in God. Trust, faith. We're going to suffer. It's going to happen. We have illnesses. Some of us are going to drown. There are going to be car wrecks. There's going to be death. We're all going to suffer, and we're all going to die. That is, pass from this world into the next. We cannot stop it. We can't change it. It's going to happen. We're going to transition into another phase of eternity, which we are promised will be better. At this point, it would be good, I think, to talk about how God takes care of us. Because God does. Why can we have faith? Because God is going to take care of us. We can trust God. And God's going to take care of us without our permission. He'll take care of us. In Matthew chapter 6, let me read beginning with verse 25. Therefore I say to you, don't worry about your life, what you'll eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Isn't life more than food and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds in the sky. They don't sow seed or harvest grain or gather crops into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you worth much more than they are? And who among you by worrying can add a single moment to your life? Let me read that again. Who among you by worrying can add a single moment to your life? Why do you worry about clothes? Notice how the lilies of the fields grow. They don't wear themselves out with work, and they don't spin cloth. But I say to you that even Solomon in all of his splendor was not dressed like one of these. If God dresses the lilies of the field so beautifully, and even though it's alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, won't God do much more for you, you people of weak faith? Therefore, don't worry. Therefore, don't worry. Go back and read the entire chapter of Matthew 6. In other words, what is being said here is don't worry. Have faith. Let's be clear on this. God expects us to do what we can do. God expects that of us. So don't quit your job and then pray to God and ask Him for a sandwich and a bag of chips. We are expected to do what we can do. Not more than we can possibly do, but what we can do. Consider some of these passages. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 tells us that the one who is unwilling to work, let him not eat. That's pretty stiff words, but God expects us to do what we can do. Luke 6:46 says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say?" And He gives us instruction. Proverbs tells us that we have our will and God has God's will. We have our plans and our desires, but what really matters is what is the plan of God? What is the purpose of God? What is the will of God? And Proverbs 19:21 says, "So let God's will be God's will. Let God's will stand." Proverbs 19:21. So, we do what we can do. We're expected to do that, what we can do. What we cannot do, what do we do with that? What we cannot do, what we cannot change, what we cannot effect, what we simply just can't change. Well, that's the realm of God. That's not the realm of us. God will handle it. Trust God. That's where faith and trust actually come in. Trust God. We don't have to force something to happen. Really? No. Let God take care of God's plan, God's will. Pray and ask God for the strength to go through whatever it is we're going through, and give everything into God's hands. Trust God. Faith means what? I trust God completely. I either trust God with my whole being completely, not worrying or fretting about the future or about changing things, or I can worry and fret about changing things and not trust God. I can pray and try to get God to change God's plan, God's will. I have so many friends who talk so much about faith. They believe so much in faith. They want to be persons of faith. But when trouble comes their way, they're scared. Fear takes over. They try to handle it themselves, force a change, force God, pray to God, get God to change God's plan, God's will. I'm not patting myself on the back, but here's the way I see it. This is the way I understand Scriptures. I look at things that happen, even if I don't like them, as simply reality. Reality. That's the way things are. I do what I can do. If there's something I can change, yes, I change that. And then I just trust God in it. Let it go, trust God. I learned that drowning in the ocean. Trust God in all things. God will take care of it. Just keep trusting God. Keep exercising faith. Keep giving it all to God. Let God be God. I can believe that God will take care of me. But if I worry and stress about it, that is not having faith. It's a difference between belief and faith. Believing, having a belief, and then acting on that belief. Having a belief and then trusting God through all of it, that's the difference on how we live our lives, whether in stress or in peace. Either we're going to worry and fret and stress, or we're going to live in trust and peace. Those are our choices. It's a quality of life. God intends for us to have this quality of life, not to stress over it. Doctors tell us that over 90% of our illnesses come from stress and worry. Not embracing faith leads us to a life of stress and illness and early death even. It can even lead to cancer, and does. Regardless of what our beliefs are, regardless of how many times we go to church that week, doesn't matter. Trust God, or else what's the point? Faith really is not just for future eternity. That's one of the places that people want to put their faith that I'm going to heaven. I trust in God, and I'm going to heaven. Faith is for here and now. Trust God in eternity, yes. Faith is for here and now. It's a gift. The bottom line on faith is it is a gift from God to you. Now you have to exercise it, but it's a gift. And we're told we can exercise it. We're told to give ourselves into the hands of God. As difficult as it may be sometimes just to let go, that's what God expects us to do if we want to live at peace. So faith is not just a set of doctrines, a set of beliefs, the teachings of religion, whatever you've been taught as you've grown up. And there are a million different things people are taught. What good is it if it's not truth? What good if it doesn't lead us to faith and peace? Faith comes from putting our actions behind our beliefs. I was impressed with reading the stories of Peter Cartwright. Peter Cartwright was a circuit-riding Methodist pastor, one of the most flamboyant and energetic pastors that Methodism has brought forth. He was a revivalist. Now, I said circuit riding. He lived from 1785 to 1872. One of the most interesting preachers to read about. Now, he was a circuit rider, but later he got into politics. He moved from Kentucky to Illinois because he didn't believe in slavery. In Illinois, he ran for the state legislature. He served in the Illinois state legislature along with a man named Abraham Lincoln. And then, when the U.S. Congress seat came open, he and Abraham Lincoln ran for that same seat, and of course Abraham Lincoln won. But as a circuit-riding preacher, Peter Cartwright was called one day to the bedside of a man who had been bitten by a snake. And he didn't pray that God would intervene and change. He prayed for the man to be able to survive the snake bite, and the medicine that they had at the time was quite limited. But he ended his prayer like this, and I thought this was most interesting. He ended his prayer by saying, and this was a mean family. Let me put this caveat in there. A mean family. The boy that was bitten by a snake was mean. The rest of his family was mean. If they believed in God, it was pretty much probably lip service. They did wrong things. They did mean things. And Peter Cartwright knew this. And so as he's praying for this man, at the end of his prayer, he says, "And Lord, if it will make the rest of them turn to you, then send snakes to bite them all." I mean, interesting that he would take make that kind of a statement right in the middle of all these folks who might take a little action of their own. Faith is putting action into our beliefs. I don't care how much you say you believe something. If you don't believe it enough to act on it, then you don't believe it. It's not faith. You put faith in a chair, you see a chair, you put faith in it, you sit down on it. That's action. Believing the chair will hold you up, that's a belief. Action. Faith put faith in action by sitting in the chair. Someone played a prank on me one time. There was a chair that was broken, and they propped it back together, and I was the last coming in, and they all sat down, and I sat down on that broken chair, and crash bang, I fell to the floor. And it wasn't very funny then, and everybody seemed to enjoy it and laugh about it. But that time, by exhibiting my faith, I had evidently put my faith in the wrong thing. The chair was not trustworthy. The chair was not to be sat in. So we take what we truly believe with all of our might and we act in it. We act on it. That's faith. Faith is action. It's not faith in action, but it's faith is action. Thanks. God bless you.